Welcome to Get Better Basketball Live. I'm Coach DeMarco, and today my guest is Coach Kramer Soderberg, head basketball coach at Millikan University, and we're going to talk about what it's like to become a new head coach. You're not going to want to miss this episode, right?
Yep.
Tell them.
You're not going to miss this episode.
But before we jump into it, make sure you hit that like button down below, turn on your notifications, and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more great video content each and every week. Another Get Better Basketball Live is up now. Coach DeMarco here with Get Better Basketball Live, and today my guest is Coach Kramer Soderberg, head basketball coach at Millikan University. Coach, thanks for joining me again.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. I'm excited to be here again.
I'm excited to talk hoops with you again. We've talked motion offense, move a blocker. We've talked pack line defense, and I am equally excited to talk with you today because we're going to talk about becoming a new head coach, and you're right in the mix of it. And, I wanted to start by asking you, as you look back at your times as a player and as an assistant coach, who's the one person or maybe a few people who have been the most influential in your career that helped you to get to this point where, you are a head basketball coach in college now?
Yeah. I've been fortunate as a player and as a coach and as a kid. I'm a coach's kid. I've been around some really good coaches, and this business is such that it's a copycat business is what it is. So I think the best coaches are the best because of the people that they were around before. So for me, it's a pretty easy list for me. My number one is my dad. He's been, he's probably into 30, 40 years of coaching now. And he's been at all levels, started at Division III, was at the Division II, was at Wisconsin as an assistant under Dick, and then head coach at SLU and Lindenwood, and now the assistant at Virginia. So he's been all over the place. He's easily the biggest influence in my coaching career and in my life as a man, as a husband, as a Christian. He's been by far the greatest influence for me. So as a basketball coach, my dad's been a huge influence, and he's one of the best in the business. Does it the right way, has a great mind, and a great man. So he's number one for sure. My high school coach, Terry Hollander, legendary high school coach in Missouri. I was fortunate enough to play for him in high school. And then uniquely enough, my dad, when he was the head coach at Lindenwood, hired my high school coach as his assistant. So I played for my high school coach for 6 years. And that was a great experience. He's been a huge part in my career as a coach, my career as a player. And I still call him often for advice. And then my grandpa also was a big influence for me. He was a high school coach for many years. And although I didn't get to see him coach, because I was too young, but I made many phone calls to grandpa as an assistant asking for advice. And he was another big one for me. So I've had so many coaches who've been influential, but those three stick out in my mind.
Yeah, I really appreciate, that answer. My dad, obviously, as a person too, has been so influential in my life, and he coached me as a kid. So always like to ask coaches that to get started because I feel like it's interesting to hear the people who have kind of influenced them and helped them to get to where they are today. And we're going to have a lot of coaches who are watching this out there today. And, they're going to be curious, how would you describe yourself as a basketball coach?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I can describe myself as an assistant coach because I know what that is like. It'll be interesting to see how much I change as a head coach. And I've been told many a times that it's definitely a different animal. So no, for me as a coach, I feel like I really have a good mind for the game, in that I've been around it for so long. I've been in the gym, my whole life. So I feel like my X and O mind is good. I really think I have a good mind for the game, offensively and defensively. I feel like one of my strengths as a coach is my ability with people as a communicator. I think I can motivate young men. I think I can. I have an ability to read individuals, and understand maybe this guy needs this type of coaching. This guy needs maybe something different. And I think that's an important aspect of coaching that I've learned from the guys that I've been around, that you can't coach every kid the same way. Every kid needs something a little bit different. And it's important to be able to kind of read those cues that your kids are giving you. Because a lot of times if a kid's struggling in a certain aspect, he's not going to come up right up to you and say, hey, coach, this is what's going on. You're going to have to kind of recognize those cues. And I think I have a good ability to do that. I'm a passionate guy. I love the game of basketball. But I also think I hope that as a head coach, I'm going to coach similarly to the way I played as a point guard. And I had a way as a player I could get riled up and really get going and be intense and in your face if needed. But most of the time I tried to stay on a level plane, especially as a point guard, in that respect. So I hope as a head coach, I can stay on that level plane and bring a level of confidence and, and leadership that can encourage my guys to kind of follow suit with that calm demeanor. But we'll see. I got some passion in me, so hopefully I can bring it out, but in a controlled format.
Well, those are some really great qualities, Coach. And as you were talking there, it got me thinking, being new to the program and being new to being a head basketball coach as well. What are some of the challenges that you anticipate facing as you take over this new program, but also as a new head basketball coach as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's anytime you take over a program that kind of has been down and out, for a while, there's some things you have to get over. There is the challenges of, man, Milliken has lost for so long. How are you going to do this? And that I think that just begins with the foundation that you set, the culture that you try to build. I don't think you try to change something in an instant. Rebuilding a program doesn't happen overnight. You have to invest in the future of what you're going to do. And, my dad is always calling and, giving me advice. And he says, if I'm giving you too much, tell me to shut up. And I said, no, bring it on. But he always says, every decision you make should be looking to the future. Every decision you make should be, okay, what will this decision have impact on what is to come in next year, in the year after, in 2 years, 3 years from now. So I want to have a kind of a extended vision of my program, and not necessarily worry about, everything day to day and exactly what can impact it right away, but what will impact it down the road, and kind of have that visionary thought process. And then I think you have to build programs with good people. I think that's where it all starts. It doesn't matter how talented players you bring in. It doesn't matter how high you can jump, or all that stuff's important. You have to be talented. You have to be athletic. All those things are important. But if I don't bring in good people, first myself and my coaching staff, but then my players, if I don't bring in young men who are invested students, who are, hard workers, good teammates, all those things that go into winning, I don't think anything else matters, from X's and O's to talent. I got to start with good people, and I got to have a visionary mindset of where we're trying to get.
Yeah, I really like that mindset, Coach, because obviously the things that you do now, that it's going to pay dividends, especially down the road. So I think that's a great mindset. And I want to ask you now. I'm kind of thinking back to when I first became a head coach, and I was a high school coach, not a college coach, but I wanted my first meeting with my team to be so impactful. And, I had this great speech planned, and, we were going to meet, and then the school was locked. We couldn't even meet in the school. We end up outside in front of the school, and, the old way of doing things, and we're going to go out there and, how great we're going to be, and we're going to be successful, and we're going to work harder and get better every day. And I remember being really excited for that. And I look back at it now, and it was kind of funny. I just, a group of players sitting out on a wall in front of the school. And, but it's funny looking back at that. And I remember my new college coach taking over in football, and how impactful it was when he came into the program. And we were pretty successful, but I just remember that first meeting. So, that aside, that's part of it. But just curious to ask you, what are the first things you did when you became head basketball coach, and what were some of your focus areas? Maybe that meeting included, but what were some of the other things you've done since becoming a head basketball coach?
Yeah, so it was definitely, wanting to establish early on what it was going to be like to be a part of this program, to establish early on, okay, what is Milliken basketball? Who are we? How do we identify ourselves? And you're right, that first meeting is important. I had all my guys who were on the team the previous year, and you bring them in a room, and that's what you try to establish is, okay, I'm drawing a line in the sand right now, and this is what we're going to be about. This is what is most important to me. If you're on board, welcome to the team. If you don't think you can do those things, I don't want you a part of the program. And that was said to every player on my roster. That was said to every kid I was recruiting is, if you can buy into what Milliken basketball is going to be like, I want you a part of the team. But if you can't, I just can't have you, because we're trying to change something here, and we're trying to establish a culture and a mentality that maybe hadn't been there for a while. And that first meeting is definitely important. So yeah, finalizing my roster was a big deal, and that first meeting started with that. So that was one of the initial things. Getting my coaching staff in place was a huge thing. That was one of the first things my dad told me is the sign of a good coach is how good a staff he hires, how good a staff he has around him. And I like to think that I did a pretty darn good job of that. I hired 2 guys that are really good, and then I'm working on hiring a GA as well. So I got a really good staff, great coaches, but more importantly to me, really good men who are going to help develop our players into good basketball players and good people. So those 2 things were definitely important to me. And then of course you start reaching out to, boosters, alumni, all those things, and try to gain the support that way. But that's kind of a secondary thing. But the first 2, definitely finalizing my roster, that team meeting, kind of establishing that culture, making sure they know what this program is about and what's most important to me, and then hiring my staff. Those were the big 3 things.
Yeah, I was definitely excited about it, kind of establishing a culture and trying to bring in some of the things that, had made other teams that I've worked with successful in the past. And I was excited about that and excited about the new opportunity. And like I said, high school versus college, there's probably some similarities and some differences, obviously recruiting being one of the big ones.
Yep.
But what are you most excited about as a new head basketball coach?
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot. I've always been very comfortable in a leadership position. As a player, I always kind of felt drawn to that role. So now as a head coach, where you kind of have that creative control over every aspect of the program, I think is something that I'm really excited about. As an assistant coach, you get opportunities to voice your input and all that stuff, and that's great, and I enjoyed it. But the line stops at some point as an assistant coach. You only go so far with what you believe in or what you think should happen. And then it always is, okay, yeah, we're going the route that the head coach thinks, no matter what I think, should go one way or the other. So that I'm really excited about that kind of control of, okay, I get to manage exactly how I want the culture to be. I get to manage exactly how I want the weight room to be, and practice planning and offense and defense. So that kind of idea of kind of for the first time being able to manage a program exactly the way I've envisioned it for, the last 10 years, as an assistant coach, you're always thinking, okay, how would I do as a head coach, and kind of preparing for that opportunity. Oh, shoot, I've been an assistant for 9 years now, and I've always had a little notebook, and the top of it said, when I become a head coach. And you just, over the years, I've just written in, this is things that I liked that my dad did. These are things that I didn't like that my dad did. These are things that I took from my high school coach and the other coaches that I've worked under. And I just started writing down, this is kind of how I envision my program to look and what I'm going to do. And now finally be able to kind of realize all those notes and try to put them into action is a really exciting thing for me. And then from an X and O basketball standpoint, I love that side of the game of, okay, trying to figure out these are the guys that I have. How can I help them become the best they can be through our offensive game plan, through our defensive game plan, through our system, through our practice plans. Though that type of thinking is exciting to me. And then I think I'm going to enjoy the games too. I think I'm going to enjoy being able to finally walk the sideline and then maybe have a little bit more control over the game than I did as an assistant. So I'm looking forward to a lot, but those are a couple things that come to mind.
Well, you got me excited here now too, Coach. And I want to ask you, you brought up a really great point about being an assistant. And I love that idea of having that notebook, and when you become a head coach, and really honing in on some of the things you like and some of the things you might not like and might not want to do. And there's value in both. And I want to shift gears here for a second away from you as a head coach. And I want to go back to that assistant coaching role and ask you, very interested, what does the ideal assistant coach look like for you now that you've become a head coach, and really thinking about your days as an assistant and what you tried to do, but also what you would envision, your assistant coaches or a great assistant coach doing for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first thing, my dad always said, a good assistant always carries a pen. That's why I was always a bad assistant, because I never had a pen on. No, so no, I think first and foremost, you gotta have passionate, loyal guys. If you don't find in this business, if you don't have a guy who's really passionate about the job he's doing, at some point he's going to taper off his effort. He's going to taper off his desire, to keep helping your program. And I think it's so important that the guys that you hire love the game, and they love helping young men become the best they can be, because the hours get long in season, and the ups and downs of a career. And as an assistant coach, so much goes through your head of, should I be here? Maybe I should apply somewhere else. Should I take my next step in my career? And you're kind of constantly thinking in that regard of, what's the next step I should take? But there's those ups and downs of the season as an assistant coach where it gets hard sometimes. And if you're really not, passionate about the game, you will taper off in what you're trying to do. And then I think finding genuinely loyal guys, guys who are going to stick behind you no matter the decisions you make, I think is really important. And there's going to be a lot of decisions, that I make that maybe my assistants don't fully agree with, or maybe they thought we should have done something a little bit different. And that's totally okay. But at some point, like I said, the line stops for the assistant, and they have to get on board with the captain of the ship. And there was many times in my career where I was fully on board, me and coach, talked about whether it was my dad or, the two other head coaches that I worked for, that I was all in with their idea. And I was like, yeah, that's it. And then there were other times where I'm like, I just don't think that's the best route for us, but they chose to take that route. And that's when you have to decide, okay, although I may not fully agree with this, I have to get on board for the betterment of the whole unit. I have to be on board with that. And there were several, probably most with my dad. There were several times where I'm like, Dad, we got to do this. And he's like, no, son, we're not doing it that way. And I just totally did not agree with that. But again, I had to fall in line as a second in command and do that. So I think passionate guys and loyal guys are really, really important as an assistant coach. And then of course, all the other things you try to find, you got to have guys who have a good mind for the game, who can see things maybe that you're not seeing, or help you kind of grow in your knowledge. You need great recruiters at the college level. So important to have guys who are charismatic and who connect with players and family. So those are all really important things, but passionate and loyal, I would say, are the two top ones for an assistant.
Well, I was very fortunate when I became a head coach, and those are passionate and loyal. Those are great qualities of an assistant coach. And my older brother, who had coached me when I was younger, became my assistant for a lot of years. And he was passionate and he was loyal, and he was very good at pulling me aside sometimes and saying, "Hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?" And we had some great car rides and great conversations and a lot of fun coaching together. So no, those are definitely great qualities. And I felt fortunate to have someone with me who I knew I could trust as an assistant. So just want to ask you, you talked about assistant coaches and sort of the questioning, is this the right spot for me? Is this the right time? And wanted to ask you, what makes this the right time for you? How did you know, hey, I'm ready to take this next step in my career, and I want to make this transition to being a head coach?
Yeah, I've felt like I was ready to be a head coach for a while now. And it's one of those things that for whatever reason, I think I was asked to be patient. There were some opportunities that I had to be a head coach. A couple of them, I just didn't feel called in that direction to go, and a couple of them I really went after hard and didn't get it. So that being said, I'm 32 years old and I'm a head coach, so I didn't have to be as patient as some coaches. So I shouldn't be complaining about that. But no, it's hard to say. I got to a point in my career where I felt like I don't want to say I was getting bored with being assistant, but I felt like I wasn't being challenged as much as I could be, or as I wanted to be. And that's kind of when I hit that point of man, I need something more, it kind of hit home for me, where like, no, I want to test myself. I want to test myself a little bit more than I'm being tested as an assistant. And that didn't mean that I didn't enjoy being assistant. That didn't mean that there wasn't challenges to being an assistant. But at some point as an assistant coach, it's not all on you, and it's not that every decision I make, or the success and failure of the program is all on me, but it more so is as a head coach. It kind of is a bigger challenge, a little bit more pressure. So it was kind of that feeling for me that was like, I need something a little bit more to push me to really dive in and to really be the best I can be. And that's kind of when I knew. And then as far as knowing it was the right time, when this job opened up and I applied for it, I really wanted it. I thought I interviewed well, and there was a waiting period. They went through the whole interview process, and it was 2-3 weeks, and kind of sitting around. I was running the program from a perspective of, I hope I'm the head coach, but I'm not yet. So there was kind of that median time where I just didn't quite know what was going on. And then you also start to, what happens if I don't get it? You got to find another job. But yeah, when I got offered the job at Millikan, I was just overjoyed. It's a great school, great league, high level basketball, big time coaches in this league. You know, I'm walking into deep waters in this league. There are some high level coaches. Some of the best coaches I've ever been around, and I've been around some good ones, are in this league. So I have my work cut out for me. It's great. But when you're talking about wanting a challenge, I've been presented a pretty big one, so I'm excited to tackle it.
Well, it sounds like you're up for that challenge, Coach. And I heard your excitement when you were talking about X's and O's. I know we've talked about some of the culture and programmatic aspects of, building a basketball team or basketball program. But you mentioned that excitement for X's and O's. And I just wanted to ask you, just generally speaking, what are we going to see from Millikan and from you on the offensive end of the floor, and then also on the defensive end of the floor as well?
Yeah, I would say overarching kind of theme of our program is we're going to be a tough, hard, tough-minded team. We're really going to be an execution-oriented team, execution-oriented offensively and defensively. I want to be unified in all aspects of our program, from on the court to off the court. But when you talk about execution, that's all about unity. That's 5 guys being on the same page, no matter what you do. I'm a pack line guy, so we're going to run a man-to-man pack line offense or defense. And then offensively, I come from a motion background, which, we've talked about on this show. But I've also been toying with some other offensive concepts that I'm liking the more I look at it. So I'm still toying with my offensive concepts and philosophies. So I'm excited to work with that on the floor and kind of see how it looks for our program. But there'll definitely be mixture of kind of that motion style of offense and maybe a little bit kind of modern, more spread out stuff, depending on how things look once we get on the court. So I'm excited to put all those things together and take the pieces that I have and try to kind of puzzle them together. But most importantly, I want to be an execution-oriented team who's tough, sound in their mind and their body and in all of our execution. And we're gonna be a fundamental basketball team that plays the game the right way. And before you can win, you have to eliminate the things that cause defeat. So we're gonna do that. That was a Dick Bennett line, a line my dad used, and a line that I'm going to use. Before we can win, we have to eliminate the things that cause defeat. So we're going to try to do that.
I think that's always a good plan, Coach. And you talked a little bit about being an execution-oriented team and that being part of your identity. So, if you could just expand on that identity, and then how do you build this, within your program?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think being everything you do on the court, I think correlates to what your culture is. So, becoming an execution-oriented team and a sound-minded, tough, physical team, all those things I think revert back to what your culture is going to be like. And like I said, I established that in the first meeting, and our culture, if you know Virginia basketball at all, what their 5 pillars are. And those pillars didn't come from Virginia. They came from Dick at Wisconsin. And my dad used those pillars at Lindenwood when I played for him. So they've been such a big part of my career that there was no other route for me to take when it came to my culture. So our 5 pillars at Millikan are going to be humility, passion, unity, servanthood, and thankfulness. Those 5 pillars are what are going to lead this program, and all those pillars, of course, they're important from the human aspect of things. They're important outside the court, but when you get down to it, also in between the lines, if my players can embody those pillars, if I can embody those pillars, that is going to lead to our execution on the court. Unity is such a big thing. Humility, knowing my strengths and my weaknesses on the court. What do I do? What is my role for this team, and what is his role? How can I help him improve his role, and how can he help me improve mine? Servanthood, being thankful in all circumstances. Whether I'm playing 20 minutes or 5 minutes, I am thankful for that opportunity. And then passion, being ultimately passionate as you play the game of basketball. So I think the beauty of those 5 pillars that Dick instilled at Wisconsin, that my dad took on at Lindenwood, that Tony does at Virginia, and that now I'm doing at Millikan, the beauty of those pillars is they, of course, are going to help my young men and myself become better people, but they're also going to help our program become the best we can be on the court, because those pillars are so important for the execution of our scheme, of our system, of all that stuff.
Well, I appreciate you sharing those pillars, those kind of core values of your program, Coach. And it sounds like that's something that will be kind of unique to you as a head coach. And I want to ask you, you're kind of in a interesting spot where you've been an assistant coach in the program, and now you're coming on to be the head coach. So are there some things that you might bring with you from the program over the last several years that you'll continue? And what are some of the other things? It sounds like the pillars, but obviously, but what are some of the other things that might, or that you might bring with you as a new head coach?
Yeah, there's plenty of things that from my, the 2 coaches that I worked under prior, plenty of things that, man, I really liked this aspect of it. I really liked how we managed, it can be anything from practice planning to the way we traveled to team events that we did, all different stuff that, that are so good and that I'll keep. But in all reality, in my opinion, when you take over a program that you've been a part of, and especially a program that maybe has struggled for a little while, you have to change a lot of what you're going to do. So there will be things that I do that are going to be similar to what the previous coaches did. But at the same time, I'm going to have a pretty focused mindset on making most of the things we do different. Not because necessarily the things that we did in the past were bad. That's just not true. But because I do think when there is a change, when something needs to shift, when somebody who is within a program takes over that same program, I think it's really important that things change in a pretty substantial way. So I'm going to have a pretty focused mindset on making things very different from when it comes to culture, to practice, to game schedules, to travel, to all those things, just to kind of turn the tide. And again, that's not because the things that were done previously were bad by any means, but I do just think it's important to kind of flip the page, move on to the next chapter, and make things a little bit different.
Yeah, and each coach is a little bit different how they do things, and you kind of put your own kind of personal stamp on things, so to speak. And just thinking about the culture, and not to say that it wasn't a good culture, but what do you do to kind of change that culture to the way you envision things? And there's a lot of situations where there's programs that are doing very well, and a new coach comes in and kind of shifts that culture a little bit to how they envision it to continue to move forward. So, how do you shift this culture to what fits or best suits how you envision this program in the future?
Yeah. I think it started with that first meeting that we talked about earlier. And at that first meeting, I presented those pillars. I presented the 5 pillars, and I said, these are what's most important to me. And I told our young men, I said, I'm going to coach these 5 pillars more than I coach anything else. I'm going to coach these 5: humility, passion, unity, servanthood, thankfulness. I'm coaching those 5 things more than I'm coaching offense, more than I'm coaching defense, more than I'm coaching your shot. And we were fortunate enough this year to, because of the COVID rules, we had some extra usable days after our season that we were able to use and get into the gym a little bit. And every time we were in the gym or in the weight room, you can ask our guys, I was coaching those things. I was yelling about those things more than I was about a turnover here or there, or, you know, a missed shot or a mental mistake. It was, are you doing those 5 things to the best of your ability? And I think that's what you have to start with that. If you don't establish a serious foundation of your culture early on and make it known that this is non-negotiable, either you're on this train or you're not on this train, then I think you're in good shape to take things where you want to get. But if you don't establish that right off the bat, I think things can go haywire quickly. And that's what I wanted to do, and that's kind of how I wanted to change things. And then I think my personality is such where I'm an intense guy, but I'm also not I'm pretty easygoing, you know, from a lot of perspectives. So I wanted to make my players feel that, like, yeah, I want you to have a say in the program. Like, I want you to tell me the things that you liked and didn't like. And that was another one of the things that I did immediately once I got hired, was I had individual meetings with each of my guys who were coming back. And I wanted to get a feel from them of, you know, tell me some things that you think that I can do to help you have a more successful time here. What can I do that is going to benefit you? So I did want to approach it as, yes, I'm drawing a line in the sand. This is the culture and this is how it's going to be. And if you don't get in line with that, you can't be a part of the program. But at the same time, I wanted them to feel that, no, he's listening to me and he wants to help me become the best I can be. So I think there was I tried to have a good balance there between, like, my way or the highway, and also, no, I hear you and what you want and what you think is best. And I'm going to take all those things to account and try to establish something that's good for all of us.
Well, I think that's a great approach, Coach, and appreciate your perspective, kind of taking us through your thought process in becoming a new head coach. And just a couple of questions left. And, you know, what I want to ask you is, when people see Millikan University play and they watch you guys next season compete out on the floor, what are they going to see? What are they going to look for?
Yeah, I want them to see a group of people, the 5 guys on the floor, the players on the bench, the coaching staff, who are one unit. Again, back to one of those pillars, unity. I want us to be so unified in a sense that, man, this team is together no matter what's going on. No matter what's going on, this team is together. I want them to see a passionate group of men, on players on the floor, players on the bench, coaches on the bench, who are laying it on the line to be successful, to win ball games. But most especially, I want them to see guys who when they do lay it on the line and find success, great. But when they don't find success, that's okay too. And I think what I've learned, you know, throughout my career is that, yeah, winning and losing is important. It really is. And especially, and I've seen it over the years in my business, if I don't win ball games, I don't have a job, you know? So I understand it is important for sure. But that being said, I think our society teaches us that winning and losing equals success. If you win, you're a success. If you lose, you're not a success. You're a failure. And that's just not true at all. I want our program to understand that, in that what truly success means is getting the most out of the potential that you have. You know, I have this much amount of me of potential as a coach. I need to fill that potential. And at the end of the day, if we win all the games or we lose all the games, if I can say at the end, no, I put it all on the line. I prepared. I got these young men ready to go through practice and film, and we had a great game plan, and I did my best to kind of, adjust in the game. Then at the end of the game, whether I won or lost, I could say, no, that is a success. And same for my young men. I want them to walk into a game feeling that way. Like, no, I laid it on the line this week in practice. I prepared really well, and I know the game plan. I'm going to execute it to the best of my abilities. Am I going to make some mistakes? Yeah, of course, but I'm going to lay it on the line. And then after that horn sounds, whether we win or lose, you can walk off the floor saying, no, that was a success for me. And I hope people see that in Milliken basketball, that we're going to be well prepared. We're going to execute. We're going to lay it on the line. And at the end of the day, if we win ball games, great. But if we lose ball games too, we're going to be okay with that, because we filled it all the way to the top, because we were fully prepared and we did everything in our ability to win that game. And in my opinion, that is what true success is, even though the world skews it in a different direction.
Coach, that's awesome, and that's so great to hear that perspective on success and what it truly means. And feel like you've given coaches so much to think about, and also me as a coach, so many great points. And I mean, I'm excited. I feel like I want to go. I'm many years past that, but I feel like I want to go play for your team. I love your passion for the game. It's really terrific. So I'm excited to see how you guys do. And I want to wrap up with two questions here. And one of them I kind of was just thinking about as you were talking, and you've mentioned your father as an influence on you. And obviously he's a great basketball mind and a great basketball coach who has had a lot of success in his career, including a national championship as a coach at Virginia. And I want to ask you, what's the best piece of it? This is a tough question, but what's the best piece of advice that your dad has given you I'm sure there's been a lot outside of the coaching realm, but when it comes to coaching, what's the best advice that he's given you when it comes to coaching?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. When I first got hired, I called my mom and dad and told them, and they were thrilled and overjoyed, and we were laughing and crying and all that stuff. But before I got off the phone, he said, "This is the first piece of advice I'm going to give you." He said, "Remember, you are not the head coach. Jesus Christ is the head coach, and you are his assistant." So that may not fit what every coach is looking for, but for me, as a Christian man, that was profound for me. And if I can walk into each day remembering that, I think I'll be just fine.
Well, as a Christian myself, Coach, I can certainly relate to what you're saying there, and that is great advice from your father. And I just want to wrap up by asking you, in your time as an assistant coach, and then also in your short time as a head coach now, without having coached any games or anything like that, what advice do you have for coaches out there who aspire to become a head coach, or who might be new to a team or a program as a head coach, or just a newly hired coach? What advice do you have for those coaches out there as they kind of transition into that role, or they hope to transition into that role someday?
Yeah. First, for the person aspiring to be a head coach, I think it's just a daily battle of continuing to try to become the best you can be. I think that's really important. I think that kind of focused mindset of just be the best assistant coach I can be today, and then the next would be the best assistant coach I can be today. And as you do that, as you stack days on top of each other and continue to improve, I think the opportunity is going to come. Of course, I think you need to search out opportunities. If they're there, you need to attack them. But at the same time, if you get lost in that, I think it can take away from your development as a coach. And your development as assistant coach is some of the most important time that you're going to have preparing you to be a head coach. So that's the advice I would give for somebody to be an aspiring head coach is just take it day to day, keep trying to become the best, assistant coach that you can be. I'm a big believer in, if you want to be a head coach, have a notebook and always write down what you think is important, what you envision your program to be, things that you like, things that you don't like. And if you keep that grind up, you keep improving each day, the opportunity will come. There's no question about that. And then for new head coaches, and this is kind of speaking to myself a little bit and giving myself my own advice here. Right off the bat, for me, the biggest difference between being an assistant coach and being a head coach is when I was an assistant coach, I was only an assistant coach when I was at the office and when I was in the gym. When I became a head coach, I was a head coach 24/7. It was like I couldn't stop thinking about, okay, what is the next thing I have to do? Oh, what if this kid doesn't want to come back? Oh, that's not good. Who I need to hire this guy. And even when I got home after work, it was still I was still thinking and processing and what should I do? And the biggest, and it stood out mostly to me because probably a week after I got hired, my mom and dad visited Decatur, and we had a good time, and we came home and we did some fun things, and after they left, my dad called me and said, "Is everything okay?" And I said, yeah. And he's like, and I was like, "Why?" And he was like, you were with us this weekend, but you weren't with us. Your body was with us, but your mind was somewhere else. And he said, I understand, like, I know you're thinking about a lot of stuff. I've been there. But at the same time, he said, you need to learn to flip that switch. You need to learn to turn the head coach mind off when you get home. And I think that is advice to myself, but I also think it's advice to all head coaches out there. Anybody becoming a head coach is, as the head coach, I've already felt it, that I don't want to turn my mind off. I always want to be thinking about what I need to do next, or, going over the offense or whatever it may be in my head. But when I get home, I need to turn that off, and I need to be a husband, and I need to be a father, and I need to focus on my duties at home. And learning to have that ability to flip on and off, I think is going to be really important to me. And I think it should be really important to all coaches out there, because most importantly, our jobs as men are to be great husbands and great fathers. Of course, we want to be great basketball coaches, but for me, the most important thing is to be a great husband, a great father, and a great Christian man. And I need to be able to flip that switch off when I come home, so I can be a good husband and a good dad.
Yeah, and that balance is always tough. And I know, especially as you move up the ranks and you're in that, college coaching position, and it can be certainly tough to do that. And I think that's really, really great and sound advice for people that want to become head coaches and what they need to do as assistants, but then also in becoming a head coach. So I just want to thank you, Coach, for, really the last 3 times we've had a chance to talk. I feel like you've shared so much, and you're really helping to grow the game of basketball by sharing in these, Get Better Basketball Live episodes. And I hope we can do this again. I wish you guys, the maximum amount of success. I'm going to be
I appreciate it.
rooting for you. I feel like you're a great person, and I know you work really hard at your craft, and you've shared so many great ideas with other coaches out there. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that as a coach, and I know other coaches do as well.
No, it's my pleasure. And that's what coaching's about. Like I said, this is a copycat business. And if I wasn't willing to share the things I've learned, that would be pretty, that would be pretty wrong, because I've been shared so much from other coaches. So if anyone's ever in the Decatur, Illinois area, they're more than welcome at my practice anytime. I want as many high school coaches to swing by as possible. Any grade school, college coaches, I welcome everybody to come by, because growing the game is an important thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Coach, and have a great night.
Thanks, John.